What if I told you that the first act of female rebellion in recorded history was so threatening that they had to turn her into a monster? Her name was Lilith. And before she became the demon of nightmares, before she was written into horror stories to terrify children, before her name became synonymous with evil, she was simply a woman who said one word: no. No, I won't submit. No, I won't lie beneath you. No, I won't accept inequality just because you demand it. And for that single act of claiming her own body, her own voice, her own sovereignty, they exiled her, erased her from the official texts, rewrote her as a child-killing succubus, made her the ultimate cautionary tale. This is what happens to women who refuse to obey. But here's what they didn't count on. Her story survived anyway. You see, I've watched people spend years making themselves smaller, softer, more acceptable, apologizing for their power, dimming their light, swallowing their truth, doubting their instincts, doing everything they've been taught to do to fit in. And I've seen the cost of that compliance. Then I discovered Lilith's real story, the one they tried to bury, and everything clicked into place. In this video, I'm going to show you the pattern of suppression that's been used for thousands of years to destroy feminine power. I'll give you historical facts, esoteric wisdom, and the dots to connect for yourself. Then you decide what's true, because once you see this, you can't unsee it. And something tells me you're ready. Let me take you back. Long before the religious texts most people know today, there were ancient Sumerian and Babylonian myths, stories carved into clay tablets thousands of years before common religious narratives were written. In these texts, there appears a figure, Lilith, a female spirit associated with wind, storms, and the untamed night. But the version of Lilith that was erased from mainstream consciousness comes from the alphabet of Ben Sira, a medieval text, and from even older Jewish mystical traditions. According to these accounts, Lilith wasn't just any woman. She was the first woman, created equal to Adam, from the same earth at the same time, not from his rib, not as an afterthought, equal. And this is where the story gets dangerous. According to the narrative, Lilith refused to lie beneath Adam during intimacy. She demanded equality in all things, physical, spiritual, intellectual. When Adam insisted on dominance, when he demanded she submit to a hierarchy she never agreed to, Lilith spoke the ineffable name of God and flew away into the wilderness. She chose exile over submission. She chose her autonomy over comfort. She chose herself. And for that, the scribes who controlled the narratives turned her into a monster. They wrote her out of the official texts. They made her a demon who preys on infants and seduces men in their sleep. They created horror stories around her name so that no woman would ever dare to follow her example. This is what I call the first act of character assassination in recorded history. Think about what Lilith actually did. She asked for equality. She refused to be dominated. She claimed ownership of her own body. And the response? Exile, demonization, erasure. You need to understand something. Lilith's rebellion wasn't about hating men or rejecting partnership. It was about rejecting hierarchy imposed without consent. It was about refusing to accept, because I said so, as a valid reason to surrender her sovereignty. And this terrified the architects of the systems being built at that time. Because if women, if anyone, started believing they had inherent equality, that they didn't need permission to exist fully, that their bodies and choices were their own, well, you can't build empires on the backs of people who know they're free. So they had to make an example of her. Here's the pattern you need to recognize, and I need you to really sit with this. Throughout history, whenever a woman stepped outside the prescribed role, whenever she claimed power, knowledge, sexual autonomy, or spiritual authority, she was labeled dangerous, demonic, evil, hysterical, witch. In the 1400s through 1700s, during the European witch trials, an estimated 40,000 to 60,000 people were executed, the vast majority women. Their crimes? Midwifery, herbalism, owning property, being unmarried, being too beautiful, being too ugly, surviving their husbands, speaking up, being unnatural. The Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, published in 1486 by Heinrich Kramer, an inquisitor for the Catholic Church, explicitly stated that women were more susceptible to demonic influence because of their carnal nature and intellectual inferiority. The same energy that demonized Lilith burned women alive for centuries. Joan of Arc, a military leader and mystic who heard divine voices, was burned at the stake at 19 years old. Her crime? wearing men's clothing and claiming direct communication with the divine without male intermediaries. Hypatia of Alexandria, a brilliant mathematician and philosopher in the 4th century, was murdered by a mob, her body dragged through the streets and burned, because her wisdom and influence threatened religious authorities. The pattern is simple. Power in women threatens control systems, so they destroy the woman and rewrite her story. Lilith is the archetype of every woman who was ever called a witch, a whore, a demon, a danger, simply for being whole, autonomous, and unapologetic. If you're seeing this pattern for the first time and it's clicking into place, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop "I see the pattern" in the comments, so I know this is resonating with you, and subscribe if you want more hidden knowledge like this. Your support helps me keep bringing you what they don't want you to know. So let's talk about what Lilith actually symbolizes, stripped of the propaganda. Lilith represents autonomy, the radical act of self-determination. She embodies the refusal to be defined by others' expectations. She is the part of you that knows, deep in your bones, that you don't need permission to exist fully. She represents sexual sovereignty, not hypersexuality or promiscuity as the stories claim, but the right to say yes and no to your own body. The understanding that your sexuality is yours, not a commodity, not a tool of control, not something to be ashamed of or weaponized against you. She represents creative life force, that raw, untamed energy that creates, destroys, and transforms. The power that births ideas, art, movements, revolutions. The power that says the old way is dead, I'm creating something new. And she represents the refusal to diminish yourself to make others comfortable. How many times have you made yourself smaller? Softened your voice? Hidden your intelligence? Downplayed your achievements? Apologized for being passionate? That's the anti-Lilith programming at work. Now, I need you to understand something important. When I talk about divine feminine, I'm not talking about gender in a binary sense. I'm talking about energy, about archetypal forces that exist in all humans regardless of gender. In esoteric traditions, from Hermetic philosophy to Gnostic Christianity to Hindu Tantra to Taoist alchemy, there's an understanding of two fundamental forces, masculine and feminine, yang and yin, solar and lunar, active and receptive. The divine feminine principle represents intuition over rigid logic, cyclical wisdom over linear progression, transformation over stagnation, depth over surface, mystery over certainty, creation and destruction as necessary forces. This isn't about being soft or nurturing in the way you've been conditioned to think of feminine. The divine feminine is the ocean, beautiful, life-giving, and absolutely capable of swallowing ships whole. It's the earthquake that levels mountains. It's Kali, the Hindu goddess who wears a necklace of skulls and dances on corpses while also being the ultimate mother. It's the full spectrum, not just the acceptable parts. And this is precisely why it had to be suppressed. Because here's what happens when you have a population connected to divine feminine wisdom. They trust their intuition, so propaganda doesn't work. They honor their bodies, so shame can't control them. They understand cycles of death and rebirth, so they're not paralyzed by change. They recognize their inherent power, so they don't need external authorities to validate their existence. So what did the rising power structures do? They systematically destroyed goddess worship. In ancient Sumer, Inanna was queen of heaven. In Egypt, Isis held supreme magical power. In Celtic lands, the Morrigan embodied sovereignty and war. These weren't nice goddesses, they were complete, containing light and shadow, creation and destruction. When Christianity spread through Europe, pagan temples were demolished. Sacred groves were cut down. Priestesses were murdered or converted. Ancient texts were burned. The Library of Alexandria, containing hundreds of thousands of scrolls with esoteric wisdom from mystery schools, was destroyed between 48 BCE and 642 CE. Imagine what knowledge was lost about consciousness, healing, spiritual practices, the nature of reality itself, turned to ash. Why? Because knowledge is power, and empires can't be built on populations that remember their own divinity. Let me bring this into your present reality, because this isn't ancient history, this is right now. The Lilith archetype threatens programming that keeps people compliant. You know what I'm talking about. Be nice. Don't make waves. Smile even when uncomfortable. Your value is in serving others. Don't be too ambitious. Don't threaten anyone with your intelligence. Don't take up too much space. Above all, seek approval and fear rejection. This programming serves a purpose. It creates humans who seek external validation, who won't question authority, who can be controlled through shame. Lilith is the antidote to that poison. Here's what I've realized, and this might be the most important thing I share with you. Systems of control don't want whole humans. They want fractured ones. They want you to split yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. They want you to exile your anger, your wildness, your authentic desires, your power, your shadow, everything they've labeled as bad. Because when you're at war with yourself, when you're spending all your energy suppressing who you really are, you have no energy left to question the systems controlling you. The sacred was split from the profane, the spiritual from the physical, light from shadow, angel from demon. But Lilith refuses that split. She's whole, complete. She is both, not one or the other. And that is what makes her dangerous to any system built on shame and fragmentation. You felt this, haven't you? That moment when you laughed too loud and someone looked at you like you'd violated an unspoken rule. When you spoke truth and were called difficult. When you set a boundary and were labeled selfish. When you felt powerful and immediately thought, I shouldn't feel this way. That's the Lilith wound. And every time you diminish yourself, every time you apologize for existing, every time you make yourself smaller to fit into spaces never designed for your full magnitude, you're reenacting Lilith's banishment. Except you're the one banishing yourself. So what does it mean to reclaim Lilith energy in your actual life? It means stopping the apologizing. It means letting yourself be angry when something is unjust, instead of turning that anger inward into depression and self-blame. It means trusting your intuition even when you can't logically explain it. It means setting boundaries without justifying them to death. It means owning your desires, creative, sexual, ambitious, without shame. It means integrating your shadow, all those parts you've been taught to exile, back into your wholeness. This isn't about becoming aggressive or rejecting partnership or connection. It's not about hating men or destroying systems for the sake of destruction. It's about restoration, restoring yourself to wholeness, restoring balance between the masculine and feminine energies within yourself and in the collective, restoring the knowledge that was stolen. In the ancient mystery schools, from Egypt to Greece to the Essenes, there was an understanding that true spiritual awakening required the integration of opposites, the marriage of masculine and feminine within the self. The symbol of the serpent, which appears in Lilith's mythology, isn't about evil, it's about wisdom and transformation. The serpent sheds its skin. It represents death and rebirth, the Kundalini energy rising up the spine, the awakening of consciousness. In the Garden of Eden story, the serpent offers knowledge, gnosis, and Eve, like Lilith, chooses knowledge over obedient ignorance. For this, she's also demonized, blamed for the fall of humanity. But what if the fall wasn't a fall? What if it was an awakening? What if choosing knowledge over blind obedience, consciousness over unconscious compliance, sovereignty over comfortable slavery, what if that wasn't humanity's downfall but its birth? The Gnostics understood this. They saw the serpent as the hero of the story, the bringer of light, the awakener. They understood that true knowledge, gnosis, comes from direct experience, not from authorities telling you what to believe. Lilith embodies that gnosis, that direct knowing, that refusal to accept secondhand truth. And here's what fascinates me. Lilith is returning to collective consciousness right now. More people are researching her, writing about her, creating art about her, reclaiming her archetype than ever before in modern history. Why? Because we're in a time of collective awakening. We're questioning narratives. We're uncovering suppressed histories. We're demanding equality. We're refusing to stay silent about abuse of power. We're integrating our shadows. We're remembering what was forgotten. The divine feminine is rising, not to dominate, but to restore balance. And the Lilith archetype is essential to that rising because she represents the refusal to comply with your own oppression. She's the voice that says, I will not participate in my own diminishment. And that voice is being activated in millions of people right now, maybe including you. Here's the truth as I see it. Lilith was never a demon. She was the first who knew her worth and refused to negotiate it. She was made into a cautionary tale to terrify anyone who might dare choose freedom over acceptance. But her story survived. Despite thousands of years of suppression, despite being written out of texts, despite being twisted into horror stories, she survived. Because archetypes can't be killed. Truth can be buried, but it doesn't die. Now you have this knowledge. You know the pattern. You've seen how power was stripped away and then demonized. You understand that what you've been taught to fear in yourself, your power, your desires, your anger, your autonomy, might actually be your greatest strength. What you do with this is up to you. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to offer what was hidden and say, decide for yourself. But I'll tell you what I believe, the parts of you that you've been taught to suppress and apologize for. Those parts might be the most sacred parts of who you are. The world doesn't need more people dimming their light. It needs people brave enough to be whole, brave enough to choose themselves. If this awakens something in you, if you're ready to stop apologizing for your existence, write "I choose myself" in the comments below. Because here you are, listening, questioning, awakening. Maybe you're not too much. Maybe you're exactly enough. Maybe it's time to stop making yourself smaller and start asking why you were taught to fear your own magnitude. Welcome to the return of what was exiled. Welcome home to yourself.